President Biden will deliver a highly anticipated State of the Union address tonight. Mr. Biden's speech comes as inflation soars here in the U.S. and fighting intensifies between Ukraine and Russia. White House officials confirm both topics will be discussed, in addition to the president's handling of the coronavirus pandemic and his future plans to unify Democrats and Republicans. For more on this, I want to bring in Leslie Sanchez and Antjuan Seawright. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist, and Antjuan is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. Thank you both so much for joining us tonight on this big night. Antjuan and Leslie, what do you think that President Biden should be focusing on tonight? Of course, he inherited so many issues, and there's the backdrop of a war. Leslie, you first.
Well, interesting. You could argue that the president inherited it. I think Republicans are going to come out and say that these are very much actions of his own doing. The biggest question coming out of the end of the night is, are people going to have more confidence in the president's ability after this? That is a big sign of the president's weakness. He's seen as weak not only on a global stage, but he's been seen weak on inflation, weak on the withdrawal from Afghanistan, weak on nearly every significant policy that he's moved forward, and certainly weak on the bipartisan nature of bringing Congress together, Republicans and Democrats, to move a positive agenda forward. People will see that he was weak in executing that as well. That's the biggest dilemma here, Weijia, is this confidence question. The positive side of that is the president has an opportunity to reset and frame this, because there is a moment of a moment right now when everyone has come together with respect to the global affair, with respect to the war in Ukraine, and they have an opportunity. But for Republicans, they're going to see: is there a more hawkish stand? Is there a political pursuit of a strategy for victory with respect to how we address Russia and Vladimir Putin? And where does energy independence and energy security fall into that? Those are going to be particular things they'll be listening for tonight.
Antjuan?
So let's talk about tonight, because it is a big night. You know, as we transition from Black History Month to Women's History Month, the backdrop tonight, or the background color tonight, you'll have two of arguably the most powerful women to ever step foot in American politics standing right beside the president tonight as he addressed the nation and his colleagues both in the House and the Senate. I think this speech tonight, based on my conversations with several of his top lieutenants, will be anchored in a few things. One, of course, what's going on abroad, and things at home. National security will be a big focus, as well as the economic conditions at home. You will not see this president run away from the crisis we face both abroad and at home. You will see him lean in on things that matter to the American people: pocketbook issues, bread and butter issues, like inflation, like jobs. He will be able to talk about his record and what he was able to accomplish legislative-wise in his first couple years of his term of the presidency. But you also see this president talk about the future and what's to come and where we need to lean our focus. Make no mistake, while we've had record economic growth and while we've had jobs that have been created at ways that not many people expected because of what this president inherited, there are still people hurting. And I don't think you'll see this president run away from that. And then, most importantly, I think you'll see this president lean in on things that are to come legislative-wise, like dealing with climate change, like lowering the cost of price and goods, and dealing with supply chain issues that exist in this country.
And sure, the president's going to lay out the future, but so many people are just trying to get by right now. And Leslie, as we mentioned, that's reflected in a new CBS News poll out today. It shows that Biden's current approval rating sits at 44%, a number that the White House certainly probably wishes was higher, even though they say they don't pay attention to any polls. Does this put the president on the defense tonight? How do you think it's going to impact the way his speech is received?
There's a tremendous amount of energy that needs to be put into this to reframe where the president is in terms of looking like he is a strong leader. So for a moment, you have Republicans and Democrats standing together to support the president, for the U.S. to have a moment of solidarity as we look to lead on the national stage. This is a moment for the president to reshift and reframe how he's seen. to talk about his accomplishments, certainly, but talk about what he wants to do moving forward. You have so many wondering if there is a political strategy with respect to this, in the United States. What is that strategy? And do not forget that the men and women, the sons and daughters, are at the point at the end of that spear in terms of having to execute the president's strategy, our men and women, particularly in uniform. So you have families across this country very much feeling compassion and empathy for what is happening around the world and wondering, can this escalate? Can this put us in a situation where we are ending 77 years of peace, of world peace? These are really big issues and opportunities for the president to look stronger. They want to see that type of leadership. And certainly the economic issue dealing with the pandemic, tremendous frustration that the president has not led in a way they feel is effective. And I've talked about some of those failures. But this, again, is an opportunity to change that. And we're going to see kind of how he comes out at the end of the night.
And Antjuan, on that note about the issues that he faces here at home, as you've already laid out a little bit, the president has faced several challenges in office, from the pandemic to the economy to issues with getting his legislative agenda passed in Congress. How can he use this opportunity tonight to reintroduce his domestic agenda and tell Americans how he plans to get it done?
Well, I think first and foremost, the president must remind the American people what he's done for them, because every single thing this president has accomplished has benefited every aspect of America, and not just interstate America, but when you get off the interstate and you go down dirt roads in America, where majority of Americans are feeling the pain of this pandemic. This president has implemented policies, and his legislative agenda has helped change the narrative and the dynamic. So I think he must remind the American people from where we have come. I think, secondly, this president must lay out his policies and positions as we move forward to really build on what we have done. Yes, everything has not gone the way he wanted to. Yes, every piece of legislation he wants to pass has not passed or gotten to his desk. However, there are things that the American people want, that they approve of him, and although his poll numbers may not be above 50%, where every strategist may want their person to be, however, every single policy item that he's advocated for, even stopped by Republicans and some Democrats in cases, they do poll above 50%, Democrats and Republicans. And I think the president must lean in on those items and remind the American people how high the stakes are going forward.
And typically those items would be front and center. It's pretty stunning that foreign policy is actually going to be on center stage. Leslie, our CBS News poll found that 83% of Republicans disapprove of the president's handling of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. And he is expected, as you mentioned, to address his response to the situation tonight. What kind of response are Republicans looking for here?
Republicans are going to say that the president promised to keep Putin in check, and he did not do that. They're going to say that the U.S. has had a policy of whether it be appeasement, trying to reset policies with Russia, or just underestimating this person as a foe. I think of the late John McCain and how consistently he talked about the ongoing threat with Putin. And here we are seeing the ramifications of that. And I think what on a global level, Risha, that's what's so stark, is to see a Western-style democracy really under attack, and the whole world is watching to see where is the U.S. leadership. What are we going to do about energy independence, especially as the policies of the Biden administration have staggered the ability to have that in the United States? And what is he going to do in terms of the stark response? He's going to laud some of the things they've done in terms of sanctions just immediately in the last week. But what are the next steps? How do we position the United States as a leader in this and this conflict? And what does it mean, certainly to the men and women in uniform here today? Those are what I think voters, regardless of your political stripes, are really going to be listening for. And that is, again, a stark contrast from what you saw with Trump. And I'm not arguing about his particular policy here, but people will say that the distinct difference of his perceived weakness on a global stage is the reason that we are in this situation today. And again, he's going to have to come across extremely strong and thorough and clear in terms of what his strategy is moving forward.
Especially for a president who has talked so much about his foreign policy experience. Of course, he's also talked about his vow to unite the country. And Antjuan, tonight, President Biden will also highlight his plans for the next year, including a new so-called unity agenda. So what can you tell us about that?
You know, President Biden catches hell from a lot of people, including those of us in his own party, because he wants to bring this country together. He believes that legislation should not be about us versus them or Democrats versus Republicans. It should be about getting us closer to that more perfect union that we all talk so loudly about. And I think this president is going to do everything he can to do that from a legislative standpoint. Candidate Joe Biden talked about battling for the soul of this nation. He did not talk about a battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. He talked about a battle for the soul of this nation. And so everything he's done has been reflective of him trying to bring Democrats and Republicans together to really speak to the needs and desires of the American people. That's why you saw the bipartisan infrastructure bill pass and how it's going to benefit the American people. And although 0 Republicans voted for the American Rescue Act, you see many of them who are going around the country talking about the benefits of it. Why? Because reflectively, every single American in this country has benefited from the policy agenda of this president. And I think you'll see him build on that tonight, a unifying message with a policy agenda that speaks directly to the hearts and minds and the needs of the American people, Democrats, Republicans, those who support him, and even those who do not.
All right, Leslie Sanchez and Antjuan Seawright, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.